mic squealed, the hall quieted, and my daughter said into the bright silver head, "The only thing my father did," she paused for effect, "was keep me from being an orphan." A few tables laughed the nervous kind of laugh people use when they don't know where to look. I stared at the sheet cake like it might tell me how to stand. Then the groom's father, Rick Harrington, in a tux that probably had a name, lifted his flute, saw the small badge on my lapel, and his hand shook. The glass slipped and tinged off the edge of the plate. "Is that the Viper Joe?" he whispered, not to me, not to the room, but to a memory. The word carried. Forks stopped. Someone killed the music mid-beat. My daughter's smile faltered like a stage light going out. The church hall at St. Mark's was bright and loud until it wasn't. White string lights ran along the ceiling in lazy loops. Folding chairs scratched tile. The scent was a mix of coffee from 2 aluminum urns, buttercream icing, and the winter salt still on men's shoes. I'd shown up early like a man taught to be on time and parked the dented Corolla by the plowed snow mound. I wore the one suit I kept good gray and clean with the knot I tied the same way my old platoon sergeant showed me. The badge on my lapel wasn't much to look at: small, pewter, 2-cross lightning bolts over a coiled shape that only means something if you were there. Table 7 was ours. They called it Family Overflow in the seating chart printed in looping script. I sat with my ex-wife Nancy, who always smelled like good perfume and better decisions, and with 3 cousins from her side I hadn't seen since the Reagan years. The kids had phones out filming everything. A tall young man in a slim vest came by to refill water and said, "Sir, do you want the chicken or the salmon?" I told him the chicken would be fine. He looked like a boy I knew from the VFW fish fry and nodded like he recognized me but couldn't place where. They'd made a big show of the introductions. The DJ misfired the couple's song 3 times, then got it right. Emily, my girl, who used to run through sprinklers in Oshkosh overalls, walked in holding Tyler's hand like they'd been doing it forever. She was shining in a dress that looked like it belonged in a magazine. I was proud, and also something I can't name. It's a feeling fathers get when they know they're in the room but not in the picture. Before the toast, Nancy leaned over and adjusted my tie the way she used to and said through a smile, "Try not to make this about you." I said I didn't plan to say a word. She patted my hand and went back to praising the floral centerpieces to the bride's friends like she'd arranged them herself. I looked at the envelope in my inner pocket. It had a check and a note I'd written in clean block letters. I'd put it there that morning at my kitchen table with the morning light on the laminated wood. I'd made coffee in the old Mr. Coffee and ate toast dry. When a man lives alone, he learns to keep his hands busy or his head gets loud. Emily took the mic before the best man. She can command a room, my girl, always could. When she was 5, she told the neighbor kid he was stealing sunshine if he stood in front of our porch steps, and he stepped aside. Tonight she looked out across 300 people and beamed like a stage actor on opening night. Tyler squeezed her hand, then slipped behind her, his smile fixed. "Family," she said, "and the Harringtons who have embraced me like their own." She waited for polite applause. It came. "I want to thank my mother for teaching me taste." More applause, longer. "And my father." She turned to me and held the pause the way you hold a note when you want folks to hear it in their bones. "The only thing my father did," she said, "was keep me from being an orphan." The sound that followed wasn't laughter so much as a pop of relief from people who mistook cruelty for wit. I saw Nancy's mouth twitch, then go still. I didn't move. When I was young, a man taught me that silence can either be a shield or a knife. It depends on who holds it. That was when Rick Harrington noticed the badge. He'd been making the kind of small talk rich men do at weddings, scanning the room like he owned the building. His eyes landed on me because the badge caught the light. He leaned closer, squinted, and his jaw opened a fraction. The glass slid from his fingers and hit the plate with a thin chime. He covered it with his palm like he'd sworn at himself. "Is that the Viper Joe?" he breathed. The words didn't make sense to most of the room, but they made sense to enough. I watched 2 older men at the far table sit up, as if their backs remembered something their brains had put away. The DJ lowered the music. The caterer stopped by the coffee urn with the spout halfway open and let it drip onto the napkin because he was listening. Tyler looked at his father, then at me, then at Emily, like he'd misread every line of a script. My ex-wife went pale. I stood up because it felt wrong to keep sitting. My knees aren't the same since I put 30 years on concrete floors at the cat plant, but they held. I didn't reach for the mic. I didn't point or correct or throw anything back. I just put my hand to my lapel and said to Rick, "It's an old thing." My voice sounded like my father's when he'd had a long day and didn't want to talk about it. Rick's face changed. The polish went. He drew himself up, not taller, just straighter, like a man at attention. "Mr. Walker," he said loud enough for the second row I should have recognized you sooner. He raised two fingers in a small, awkward salute that looked out of place among peonies and floating candles and exactly right to my old bones. He turned to the room as if he were introducing a keynote. "Folks, if you know, you know." You could feel the air shift. Respect is a strange thing. You can't buy it with a band or a bar package. It lives in the stories men tell quietly at coffee counters and in the way other men listen. A young usher stepped back and took his hands out of his pockets. The boy with the water pitcher held it midair. Emily's eyes flashed anger, confusion, a child caught between what she wanted to be true and what was. I touched the envelope in my pocket. It felt heavier than paper. I told myself to breathe. The hall smelled like buttercream and scorched coffee and winter coats. Somewhere a baby fussed, then settled. I was going to keep my word to myself and not make a scene. Then the scene came to me. I didn't sleep much the night before the wedding. Old men talk about sleeping like a rock. That's not me. I wake up 3-4 times, listen to the quiet count. The refrigerator hums till morning. At 5 I gave up, pulled on jeans and drove to Haddad's for coffee that tastes the same whether you're celebrating or bearing something. The neon open flickered like always. The counter girl with a pierced eyebrow said, "Mr. Walker, your usual," and I nodded. She poured it black. Coffee, eggs, 2 slices of rye. A man at the far end read the Journal Star sports page and shook his head over Bradley's chances. It was cold enough outside to make your teeth sing. The bell on the door chirped every time a contractor came in wearing a Carhartt jacket, white with drywall dust. That's Peoria on a Saturday. The men who build things, the women who run the books, and a river that keeps moving even when nothing else does. After breakfast, I drove past the Caterpillar plant out of habit like some retired hound circling the old field. The parking lot was half full, a shift change. I could almost feel the grit of metal filings in my palms again. 30 years of turning wrenches sands a man down and makes him strong at the same time. The guys used to joke my handshake could strip paint. Steady Joe the foreman would say, "We need that paint." I stopped at Heartland Credit Union when they opened. Marie, who has known me since Emily sold Girl Scout cookies in that lobby, waved me up. "You ready for the big day?" she asked, counting 20s with a dry snap. I told her I was. She said, "You want envelopes?" I said I had one. She looked at me over the glasses she wore on a chain and said softly, "Don't let anyone push you to sign what you don't want to." I nodded. In a small town that isn't small, people find ways to tell you things without gossiping. Back home, I shaved slow-nicked myself once and pressed cold tissue to my cheek until the spot went white. I took the small box from the top dresser drawer and opened it. Inside was the pewter badge, not a medal. We didn't do medals for that kind of work. A team coin, a joke made heavy over time. 2 crossed lightning bolts over a coil you might take for rope. "You sure about wearing that?" I asked the empty room. The furnace kicked on with a soft whump like an old dog settling. The nickname Viper Joe didn't come out of glory. It came out of a night when things went sideways and didn't stay there. We were supposed to be in and out. Radios and maps and the kind of wind that steals your voice. The pilot said he couldn't see, and the ground was a firefly mess of lights and bad decisions. I had a line in my ear, a pencil behind my ear, and a man next to me who hadn't slept in 2 days. I said, "Turn 2 degrees south, ride the black line, look for the broken rail." And he did, and because he did, a kid with a wife who liked pink nail polish got to hug her again. In the debrief, one of the boys said, "Joe hisses in your ear, and you do what he says," and someone else said, "Viper Joe," and it stuck the way gum sticks to a church pew. I never put it on a license plate or told it at parties. Some things belong to the people who were there. Nancy hated that part of me. "You go quiet," she'd say, not angry, just tired. "You turn into a wall with eyes." She liked rooms where talk ran easy and the ice never melted. We made it 25 years before the talking dried up. Divorce is a slow leak, not a blowout. You wake one morning and the house sits low on the rim and you pretend you don't feel it. Emily learned how to read a room from her mother. She learned how to read a face from me, or so I used to think. As a little girl, she would sit in my lap at the VFW fish fry and fold raffle tickets like she was handling fragile birds. "Daddy, why do people put money in a bucket?" she asked once. "Because it makes them feel like they're part of something," I said. "Are we part of something?" she asked. "Always," I said, and believed it down to the bone. Time slid. She went off to Illinois State, came back for Christmas with shinier words. Nancy said things like networking and proximity, and I kept my mouth shut because a man doesn't win by fighting every noun. The first time I met the Harringtons was at a donor reception at the Peoria Civic Center. I wore a sport coat that fit me better 20 pounds ago. Rick held court near a cheese table like a battalion commander disguised as a banker. He shook my hand and said, "Joe Walker, Caterpillar, respect." He didn't ask what I did, which in certain rooms counts as respect. His wife Elaine eyed my shoes and said, "Isn't the riverfront quaint this year?" in a tone that meant something else. At a tasting 2 months before the wedding, I picked up the check for the sheet cakes without announcing it. The girl with the binder said, "For the grand display, we recommend tiered fondant," and Nancy squeezed Emily's arm and said, "Yes, we'll do that." They talked in the language of people who don't work Saturdays. I said sheet cake tastes better. The binder girl laughed like I'd told a joke. Later in the parking lot, Emily kissed my cheek and said, "Dad, don't be stubborn. The Harringtons are generous." I said, "Generous is paying your own bill, kid." She rolled her eyes at a horizon I couldn't see. Hank Morales, the VFW post commander, called that night. "You breathing, Joe?" he asked. Hank has a voice like gravel and a laugh like a church bell. "You need me to show up in my best jacket and scare any suits?" I told him I was fine. He said, "Set your terms early. People write on you if you leave blank space." He wasn't wrong. 2 weeks out, I got a call from Tyler about some vendor paperwork. "It's just a formality," he said, sheepish. "It needs a co-signer in case of, liability." I said, "I'm not co-signing anything I didn't order." He said, Totally, I get it." He didn't. I drove to Heartland the next day and Marie slid a sample copy across the counter. "If you sign here," she tapped, "your house as collateral if certain conditions hit." I slid it back and said, "No thanks." She said, "Good man." I kept doing the small things, picking up dry cleaning, fixing a loose cabinet door at Nancy's, without being asked because I know the difference between a home and a house. When people say boundaries, what they mean is a fence that lets you wave to your neighbor and still keep your tomatoes safe. The Friday before the wedding, I sat at the kitchen table with the envelope and the check and wrote the note. I kept it plain. To Emily and Tyler. "For your start, with love. Let's sit down after the honeymoon. No rush. Respect is part of the gift." I slid it into the inner pocket of my suit jacket and buttoned it closed like I was closing a small door. In the mirror, the suit looked fine. The badge sat under the lapel's line. I didn't pin it for anyone to see. I pinned it so I could feel its weight when the room got noisy. I told the empty house, "Just be steady, Joe." The furnace kicked again. Outside the neighborhood, kids rode bikes with knit hats on because they wouldn't let winter win. I thought about the church hall string lights, coffee urns folding chairs. I thought about my girl in white and the long aisle. I thought about a line I'd heard at a VFW funeral. "A man is what he does when nobody cheers." Vendors multiplied like dandelions. Every day there was a new email from the planner, linen upgrades, charger plates, premium uplighting. You'd think we were staging a Broadway revival in a church hall whose best feature was a coat rack that didn't wobble. The planner, a quick-talking woman with perfect nails, put me on a group thread labeled Family Core. The Harringtons replied within minutes with thumbs ups and exclamation marks. Nancy replied with full sentences, crisp as ironed napkins. I read it all on my old Android thumb, hovering over the keyboard, then slid the phone back in my pocket. There's such a thing as adding fuel to a fire by just when standing too close. 2 days after the sheet cake dust-up, Emily called. I could tell she was walking the echo of heels, a door soft close, that city hallway sound. "Dad, can you pop by the boutique? We need your signature on the venue insurance rider. It's just boilerplate." "Email it," I said. "I'll read it." "It needs to be notarized," she said. "They can do it here." "Then I'll read it there," I said. She sighed. "Please don't make this hard." "I'm trying to make it careful." When I got there, the receptionist wore black everything, and a smile that never reached her eyes. The paper was 3 pages longer than a writer has any right to be. 2 paragraphs in, I found the part that let the vendor pursue responsible parties if certain conditions weren't met. Responsible parties, I said aloud. The receptionist chirped. It's all standard. I took a photo and texted Marie at Heartland. Does this make my house a piñata? She wrote back, bring it in. I told the receptionist I'd return, and she spun the pen in her fingers like a baton. At Heartland, Marie read the pages, slow lips moving. If you sign here, she tapped a blank, and they miss a payment, you could be on the hook. Not just embarrassment, dollars. Then I'm not signing. Good, she said. And Joe? Yeah. Don't let them turn love into paperwork. I walked out past the bulletin board with scholarship flyers and a picture of last year's toy drive. A photo of kids in winter coats grinning under a banner. Hope looks good on paper. I thought about that when I sat in my car heater hissing weak heat fingers, thawing. I thought about what a gift is and what it becomes when you attach a leash to it. My envelope in the closet felt heavier. That night at St. Mark's, there was a meeting about the roof fund. Pastor Carl wore a sweater with elbows that had seen 3 winters too many. He poured weak coffee into styrofoam and asked about my girl. She's getting married, I said. He smiled the pastoral smile that holds joy and caution. That's something. I want to give them a start, I said. I also don't want to buy a lesson they won't learn. He tilted his head. Say that again. I want to help without making it worse. Carl is a man who listens for a living. He set his coffee down. We have a little scholarship through the church, help for kids of single parents' trades, school or community college. It's small but good. You helped us put the paperwork together when Eileen passed. I remember, I said. The ache of Eileen, my sister, came and went like weather. You could do your gift either direction, he said. If it goes one way tonight and another way, if the night goes another way, a fork in the road is still a road. Is that allowed, I asked. Everything's allowed if it's honest, he said. And you tell yourself the truth about why you're doing it. I went home and pulled the envelope. I took the note out, smoothed it on the table, and added a line printed careful. We'll have a sit down after the honeymoon. No rush. Respect is part of the gift. I put a second note behind it addressed to St. Mark's Scholarship Committee. Same amount. 2 futures folded together waiting on weather. The rehearsal dinner was at an Italian place on War Memorial, with candles and wine bottles and murals of vineyards no one in the room had ever walked. I wore a sport coat because Nancy said business casual in a tone that meant anything less would embarrass her. The Harringtons arrived in a hush that felt expensive. Rick clapped Tyler's shoulder like a coach with a favored quarterback. Elaine Harrington air-kissed Nancy. You must be exhausted, she said, meaning the work of shepherding a groom's mother through showtime. I sat with the uncle's men who talk about gas prices and rotator cuffs with equal seriousness. Bread came, then salad. The planner stood to explain tomorrow's timeline in military detail that would have embarrassed actual military. At exactly 6:43 we will, she began. 6:45, I said, because sometimes a man can't help himself. Laughter tittered, then died, then tittered again, when people realized it was allowed. When the check came, Rick reached without looking. I put my hand over his. Let me get this, I said. He studied me for a beat, then nodded once the smallest acknowledgement between men who know money isn't the only way to measure muscle. In the parking lot, Emily slid her arm through mine. Her perfume was expensive and familiar. Dad, she said, sugar on glass about the writer. It's fine. The Harringtons do this all the time. Then let the Harringtons sign it, I said. Her fingers tightened. Why do you always have to be difficult? I'm not. I'm being steady. Same thing in your dictionary. Maybe, I said, but the roof you stand under tomorrow is built on people who read what they sign. She pulled away. Don't ruin this. I won't, I said. You might. That night, Hank called again. You sure you don't want me in a suit in the back row, he asked. Just in case the air needs changing. I've got it, I said. Then set your terms, he said. And smile while you do it. Nothing rattles a bully like a man who doesn't raise his voice. I ironed my shirt at 10, the white catching kitchen light, in a way that made the small stains on the board look like maps. I thought about co-signers and conditions and the quiet pound of humiliation dressed up as humor. Paper cuts all of it. You don't bleed much, but you feel everyone. I laid out the badge and the envelope beside my keys. The badge wasn't for show. It was a weight I could touch if words in the room started flying like gnats. The envelope was for a beginning theirs or someone else's. I slept in pieces again the way a man does when tomorrow carries more than one possible ending. In the morning, I would tie the knot the way my sergeant taught me and practice one sentence in my head: I won't be spoken for. It fit in my mouth like a coin. The knot came out clean on the first try. Maybe that was a good sign. I said the sentence again quietly in the bathroom mirror so the steam wouldn't carry it: I won't be spoken for. It sounded less like a threat and more like weather's steady, not dramatic. I slid the envelope into the inner pocket and pressed it flat with my palm. The badge lay on the dresser like a coin you'd keep from a trip not worth much, priceless anyway. I pinned it low under the lapel where my fingers could find it if my temper did. On Thursday, 2 days before the wedding, I'd done the one piece nobody in a tux would clap for. I drove over the bridge to the Tazewell County Courthouse, a building that looks tired in a comfortable way, like a granddad who still splits his own firewood. The oak banister on the stair had been rubbed dull by 100 years of hands that didn't think about rubbing anything. My boots made a respectful noise up each step. The clerk behind the glass said, "Morning, Mr. Walker, because I'm the kind of man who shows up to pay things in person." The lawyer's office smelled like paper and lemon oil and ink that had time to dry. "Living trust update," she said, rolling her chair in. "Young, quick mind, old soul. You want to love your daughter and protect your daughter at the same time? That's what I heard on the phone." I nodded. She adjusted her glasses. "We can set character conditions, not punitive guidelines. Funds release on milestones, work history course completion, verified hours served somewhere that needs hands. No spouse access, no commingling with joint accounts. You hold the pen while still letting her write. Does that sound like you?" "It sounds like a fence that doesn't hide the garden," I said. She smiled at that. "We'll keep it simple. Simplicity is hard to fight and harder to misunderstand." She slid a stack where the signatures go. "Initial here to confirm no vendor liabilities or wedding debts attached to this instrument." I signed with the same pen I used to write checks for the VFW raffles, the barrel worn smooth where my fingers insist on holding too tight. The pen made a sound on paper. I can still hear a dry whisper of a man drawing a line he plans to keep. When it was done, she lifted a banker's lamp and pointed. "You want to add a charitable clause, a forked path as you put it. If you don't deliver X to party A by date, YX flows to the St. Mark's Scholarship Fund." "Do it," I said, "and name it for Emily. Let her feel the shape of her name doing good." "Kind," she said. "Kindness with a spine tends to hold." I walked back down the courthouse stairs feeling taller and not lighter. There's a weight a man carries when he finally decides to carry only what's his. Outside, a school bus groaned past. Kids in puffy coats fogged the windows with their breath and drew smiley faces in the fog, same as we did, same as kids will. I stood there a minute listening to the engine fade, then went to St. Mark's and asked Pastor Carl if he had a minute to talk about forms. He always does. He took the template I'd scribbled and printed it proper. 2 futures, he said, tapping the paper. You can't force people to pick the right one, but you can make the right one simple. Friday afternoon, my phone buzzed. Tyler, we hadn't talked, just us. "Hey, Mr. Walker, quick thing. Can we grab 5 minutes at the hall? There's something I want to run by you." St. Mark's Hall was in rehearsal mode. Women with clipboards, men lifting tables like they were training for a competition. Nobody asked them to enter. Tyler stood by the stage steps with his hands in his pockets and relief on his face when he saw me like a kid who found the one teacher who doesn't mind dumb questions. I just wanted to say, he started, "I know Emily and your ex, Mrs. Walker, can be intense about the wedding. I appreciate you for the sheet cakes and everything." "You don't owe me a speech," I said. He looked down at his shoes, shiny like he'd borrowed them from a better dresser. I should have stepped in on the insurance writer. My dad said the same thing. If you order it, you sign it. "I'm sorry." "Apology accepted," I said. "Words are cheap unless they cost the person who says them. Yours cost you some comfort. That counts." He blew out a breath. "I love Emily," he said, small and fierce. "Sometimes she runs hot. I let it pass because picking every battle ruins the day. Then I looked back and realized the day got ruined anyway." "That's a married sentence," I said, and he half laughed. You can fix a lot with straight talk and quiet backs. He nodded, eager as a pup. Got it. Do you, I said, or do you just want this conversation to be over? He met my eyes. Good, I do, he said. I'll try. Trying is a start, I said. Here's my part. I'm not up there tonight to pull rank or tell war stories. I don't do those. I'm here to watch my kids say yes. If anyone turns me into a punchline, I won't raise my voice. I'll set my terms. Calm, clear, and I'll keep my dignity even if I have to carry it past 300 people to the door. He swallowed. Understood. I clapped his shoulder once. My hand covered more of it than I expected. He's a decent boy. Not weak, just still learning that silence can be a shield if you're holding it for the right reason. One more thing I said. When you see her run hot, don't pour gasoline by apologizing for the wrong person. Just tell the truth. Gentle and plain. That's harder than it sounds. Right, he said. Gentle and plain. On the way out, I stopped by the kitchen to carry a box of rentals for a woman who shouldn't have to carry boxes. She thanked me like I'd done her a favor and not like I was doing something any man with a back should do. My knees complained 2 steps from the truck. I told them to file their grievance with my boots. At home, I laid everything out the way my old sergeant would have liked: keys, wallet, badge, envelope, phone list, and names for who sits where, in case someone asked me and not the planner. I took the badge in my fingers. Not a medal, not a ticket to respect. Just a reminder of a night when a lot could have gone wrong and didn't, because men who didn't love attention loved each other enough to do their jobs clean. I pinned it on because I knew this: some rooms try to tell you who you are. It helps to bring proof. As dust slid over the neighborhood, kids raced scooters past mailboxes, their breath making little ghosts in the air. A woman down the block dragged a trash can that squeaked all the way to the curb. Somewhere a television did the muffled cheer of a high school game. I boiled spaghetti and opened a jar of sauce and ate standing at the counter, because you don't set a table for one unless you're trying to impress yourself. Before bed, I wrote one more note, not to Emily, not to any committee, to myself. Hold your ground without hurting anyone. I slid it behind the driver's license in my wallet and snapped it shut. Then I turned out the kitchen light, watched the red eye of the coffee maker blink, and let the house settle. In the morning, I would shave and tie the knot and show up early. I'd shake the usher's hand and thank the caterer and tell the kid with drywall dust on his work boots that the chicken was fine. I'd sit at table 7 and keep my back straight. If the room turned, I'd touch the badge so my hands remembered my promise. Revenge is a loud word for a quiet thing, a boundary you draw in pen and read out loud in a steady voice. The hall moved like a machine that had lost a belt light's pretty gear slipping. You could feel it in the way people shifted in their chairs, waiting to be told which face to wear. Emily held the mic like a trophy. She didn't see Rick yet. She saw me. She saw a target that didn't move. That's the trouble with a man who doesn't flinch. You think he can't feel. Dad, she said, riding the tremor into a smile. I'm kidding. Lighten up. The DJ hovered by his table finger on a fader like a hospital intern on the morphine. Nancy stared hard at the centerpiece as if peonies could save her. Tyler tried to reach for the mic, thought better reach for Emily's hand instead. She let him have one knuckle. Rick stepped into the aisle between tables, a man unlearning a tux in real time. Hold up, he said, not loud, just certain. The old vets at table 12 heard it and sat straighter. He angled toward me, eyes on the badge. Mr. Walker, he said the words, pulling attention like a magnet drags filings. I knew a man in 79 by that nickname. He walked a bird through smoke with a voice like a level line. He faced the room, chin lifting one notch. Some of us got older because of his kind. The quiet deepened. It wasn't reverent at first, it was confused. The younger ones didn't know what to do with a sentence that didn't ask them for anything. A woman at table 5 lowered her phone without meaning to. The planner froze mid-step. The coffee urn hissed. I stood because sitting felt like lying. My chair legs scraped. I didn't take the mic. I put both hands on the back of the chair and let the wood know I was there. I'm not a story, I said. I turned wrenches at Kat. I mow my own lawn crooked and pretend I don't see it. I come to St. Mark's for fish fry and stay to stack chairs. Tonight I came to see my daughter happy. My voice wasn't big. It carried because it didn't try to. Emily's mascara brave smiled at me. Dad, if you're going to make a speech. I'm not, I said. I'm going to keep a promise. I reached into the inner pocket and took out the envelope. It looked small in a hall that had spent 3 weeks learning how to look bigger than it was. I laid it on the edge of the DJ's table so I wouldn't have to touch the microphone to be heard. This I said, tapping the paper with one finger, was a gift. I wrote a note. It said we'd sit down after the honeymoon, no rush. It said respect is part of the gift. Someone coughed. Someone else whispered, "What does that mean?" Rick didn't move. "I was raised that you can joke about a man's hat or his truck," I said, "but not his name. Tonight my name got turned into something it isn't." I looked at Emily, not hard, just accurate. I don't need an apology to breathe. I needed to show you the line where my part ends. I slid another envelope out and set it beside the first. White, same weight, a different future, folded inside. Here's the rest of my promise. If the terms aren't met, the simple ones, the ones you teach a child at a kitchen table, this money goes to the St. Mark's Scholarship for kids of single parents. It'll go in your maiden name, M. Your name can do good whether you meant it to tonight or not. A murmur broke. It wasn't angry. It was the sound adults make when someone does something that reaches past the fight into the fix. Pastor Carl, 3 rows back, took off his glasses and cleaned them with the napkin like he always does when he's buying time to feel something. Emily opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "You're humiliating me," she said, but the words came out smaller than she meant. "You're making a scene." "I'm standing still," I said. The scene came to me. Nancy found her spine. "Joseph," she said, each syllable ironed, "this is a wedding." "It still is," I said. "We can keep it that way." Rick moved closer to the DJ table. He put 2 fingers on the envelope like a man testing the grain of wood. "Mr. Walker," he said, voice steady, "I'll cover any vendor's shortfall this room stacked up. That's my mess to mine." He looked at his son, then at Emily. "But I'll ask for something in return." Dad, Tyler said, warning and plea braided together. Rick ignored him in the way fathers sometimes have to. He turned to Emily. "Young lady," he said, "not unkind, just exact. You apologize to your father. Not because of what he did then, which you don't understand, but because of what he does now. Show up, pay attention, and carry himself like a man who knows where his edges are." You could hear the furnace kick on. You could hear it cut off. 300 people discovered the size of their own lungs. Emily's chin trembled. For a second, she was 5 again in Oshkosh, lower lip out, because the neighbor kid took her chalk. Then she was 28 again, armor buckling in the middle. She looked at me, then at the badge, then at the envelopes. "Dad," she said, and the word worked more than any speech would have. I was trying to be funny." "I know," I said. "Now be kind." Tyler stepped forward like a man remembering his legs. "Em," he said softly, "he's right." She wiped under one eye, not caring who saw the smudge. "I'm sorry," she said to me. "Not a performance, not a curtsy. A sentence with a cost. I'm sorry for turning you into a line and a toast." "That'll do," I said. "We'll talk after your trip. 2 chairs, no microphones." I picked up the second envelope, the scholarship one, and handed it to Pastor Carl. He held it with both hands like he's held 1,000 casseroles and 1,000 griefs. "We'll keep it safe," he said. I left the first envelope on the table under the DJ's elbow, where the air from the vents ruffled its flap. "This stays ready," I said to Emily and Tyler. "You earn it by making a home, not a headline." Rick cleared his throat. He turned to the room. "Folks," he said, banker, voice gone, soldier voice, back Mr. Walker's, with me at the head table if he'll sit there. "If you've got stories about paying your own bills and owning your own name, bring them. If you don't, you can listen." There was a scatter of claps at first, then more, then a thrum that lifted. The vets at table 12 stood. The men with drywall dust on their boots stood. The caterer wiped his hands on his apron and stood. Nancy did stiff as a fence post. The planner cried in a way that didn't ruin her makeup because she knew how. I didn't raise my arms or nod like a mayor. I just picked up my chair with both hands. Old habit, don't scrape the floor, and carried it forward. Tyler grabbed the other side before I could tell him to. We set it at the head table. He pulled out the chair. I sat. He sat. Emily sat between us, eyes red, shoulders down. Her hand found mine under the cloth like it used to when thunder cracked. The DJ, bless the kid, found a song that didn't brag. Plates arrived. The chicken was fine. People breathed again differently than before. Across the room, Hank Morales had slipped in at some point, hands in his best jacket. He caught my eye and grinned like a man who'd brought jumper cables and didn't need to use them. He mouthed, "Set your terms," and tipped an invisible cap. I touched the badge once, just enough to feel the cool metal. Not for show, for proof. You don't have to be loud to be heard. You don't have to win to be right. Sometimes you set a line in a church hall and the whole town learns where it is. The first song, after all, that was an old one you hear in grocery stores and church basements, something about standing by me. It worked better than anything the planner had on her timeline. People relaxed into forks and small jokes, the way you settle a jacket on your shoulders after someone else hangs it wrong. I ate without tasting. The badge lay still under my fingers. I kept my face plain. After the cake-cutting fondant that fought the knife and sheet cake that didn't, Pastor Carl put his hand on my sleeve and tipped his head toward the side hall. Emily followed Tyler behind her. Rick stepped up with us and then stopped at the doorway, like a man who knows the difference between witness and wait. The side hall smelled like mop water and old sermons. Coats on racks, a bulletin board with Girl Scout cookie orders, and a flyer for an AA meeting. Fluorescent lights hummed. Emily stood by the Coke machine and looked smaller than the dress allowed. For a second, I saw her at 8 front teeth still coming in hair and a crooked ponytail. She insisted on tying herself. I shouldn't have said it. She started too fast, like ripping tape. I was trying to be, I don't know, sharp. That room wants sharp. I thought she stopped. I thought if I made a joke first, nobody could make one about you. And you made one anyway, I said, not mean. She nodded. Tyler's hand hovered at her back and then landed there, careful. I'm sorry, she said again, softer. I forgot you'd be standing there as a person, not a character in my story. You're my kid, I said. That's the beginning and the end of it. But you don't get to spend me for applause. I took a breath. I won't be spoken for. She swallowed and laughed, a little broken laugh. You in that sentence. It fits, I said. It fits days like this. Tyler tried. We'll make it right, Mr. Walker. You'll make a home, I said. That's how you make it right. I looked at Emily. 2 chairs after your trip. No microphones. She nodded hard, like a promise hurts when it locks in. Okay. Back in the hall, Rick was signing something by the kitchen with the planner. He folded his pen and looked up at me. Vendors are squared, he said, as if reporting to a man due a report. It's my family's mess to tidy, not yours. It's all our mess, I said, because the truth has a way of making pride put its jacket back on. But thank you. He shifted his weight and blew out his cheeks. I didn't raise Tyler to stand there like furniture, he said. He'll learn. Learning's ugly, I said. If it looks pretty, it's theater. Nancy found me near the coffee urn. You had to, she said, voice low and sharp. Publicly. I had to draw a line, I said. Public is where it got crossed. You embarrassed her. She'll survive embarrassment, I said. Better that than build a life on the idea that people are props. She tightened her jaw the way she used to when a bill came due she hadn't planned for. You love your righteousness, she said. I love my name, I said, and hers. You can be angry at me, Nancy, just be accurate. She stared at the urn, then at her hands, then away. Enjoy your applause, she said, but it came out tired. It won't tuck you in tonight. It never did, I said. The rest of the evening tried to remember it was a wedding. Kids slid on the waxed floor in their socks. An aunt taught a line dance to 3 cousins and a banker. The chicken was fine. At the end, I stacked chairs because I don't know how to leave a room without doing something with my hands. Rick tried to take a stack from me. I let him take one. Men like us fight each other for the right to carry a thing that doesn't need carrying. Sunday afternoon, while most of town watched the Bears lose, I sat at the walnut desk in Pastor Carl's office with a pen that didn't skip. We filled out the scholarship redirection form clean. Name line Emily Walker. Not to rub salt, to show her name can travel where kindness goes. Carl nodded over every line like a man blessing fence posts. I'll bring this to the committee Tuesday, he said. We'll keep the funds in a separate envelope until she and you talk. He slid the envelope into a drawer that stuck and had to be jiggled, a very St. Mark's kind of security. Monday morning, I swung by Heartland Credit Union with a thermos of coffee and a list. Marie printed me new account settings. No joint access, she said, tapping. Alerts on everything. It's your money. Make it behave. I should have done this sooner, I said. You did it when you were ready, she said. That's when most good things happen. At the counter, I ran into a kid from years back now, a roofer with sun all over his face. He told me his crew was slow and winter was long. I told him there was hot coffee at the VFW Wednesday if he wanted a free cup and a ham sandwich, and to trade lies about high school games. He smiled like a man who'd been given a coat and didn't know he needed one. Wednesday was fish fry. VFW post 886 smelled like fryer oil lemon wedges and old wood that has heard more truth than most microphones. Hank hugged me with one arm because the other held a tray. "Heard you set your terms," he said. "I did," I said. "Good," he said. "We saved you a seat that doesn't wobble." Men clapped my shoulder, not like I'd won something, but like I'd returned something. They all recognized the spine you can't borrow. We talked knee replacements and snow tires and the kid who pitched a no-hitter in '94, which somehow gets better every year. Hank slid me an extra roll like he was dealing cards. Thursday evening, when the light went gold and then gray, someone knocked on my porch door. Tyler stood there with his hands jammed in his coat pockets like he was afraid they'd fly away. He looked young. Men who apologize look young, no matter their age. "Can I?" he asked, nodding to the porch chair. I waved him in. He sat and stared at the floorboards like they might tell him what to say. "I should have stopped her before she started," he said. "I don't want to be the kind of man who lets the women he loves be cruel in public because the private cost is smaller." "That's a mouthful," I said. "It's also the right mouthful." He rubbed his thumb on the edge of the chair. "I'm sorry." "I know," I said. "Say it to her too, not as a way to get out of a fight, as a way to step into your job." "My job?" "Be a husband," I said, which is mostly telling the truth without making it a weapon. I leaned back. "Here are my terms if you want a father-in-law who shows up with tools when your sink fights back. You keep your house a place where people get better, not meaner. You don't use me for punchlines or pocketbooks. You come to me straight when you need help. And you pick one night a week where phones go in a drawer and you look at each other like you mean it. Can you manage that?" He nodded quick. "Yes, sir." "Don't sir me," I said. "Just do it." He smiled for the first time. "Deal." We sat a while listening to the neighbors' wind chimes try to make a song out of January. A train down by the river moaned long and low, like a beast remembering the prairie. Tyler stuck out his hand, and I shook it. His grip had more to it than last week. On my kitchen table sat a folded church bulletin and a copy of the scholarship form under a magnet shaped like Illinois. I put a finger on the paper and thought about the first handoff Emily would make, enveloped to a single mom at ICC getting her HVAC cert. I could see it like it already happened. Fluorescent light, cheap coffee. Two women, one tired, one humbled, exchanging. Something money could measure and something it couldn't. I slept better that night. Not like a rock, like a man whose house sat square on its footings again. Rick picked the Peoria Civic Center for coffee because that lobby belongs to nobody and everybody. The carpet has seen graduations and concerts and trade shows about seed corn. We took a table near the tall glass where you can watch the river keep its appointment with the valley. He wore a wool coat open over a sweater, the tucks long returned to whatever closet it sleeps in. I wore my good jacket and the same boots I wear for everything. The concession stand girl poured our coffees into paper cups and said, "Cream sugar?" We both shook our heads like men who've learned to take heat straight. "I should have recognized you sooner," he said when we sat. "That night in '79 keeps revising itself." "I'm not that night," I said. "I'm a man who shows up on time and pays for sheet cake." "I know," he said. He looked older without the tux. In a good way. Dignity's the last uniform we wear. I forgot that for a while. Started thinking it came with certain restaurants and certain donations. "The fish fry at VFW will fix that," I said. He smiled. "Your daughter's a bright one," he said. "She's got gears. She'll learn which ones grind and which ones move the load." "She will," I said, because I needed to hear it out loud. We sat without filling the air to prove we were friends. That's its own kind of friendship. He pulled a folded check from his coat and slid it across the table without drama. "For the church fund if it goes that way," he said. "Not to buy anything back, to put a brick where a brick belongs." "I'll pass it along if that's the road," I said. He didn't try to force my hand either direction. We drank our coffees like men who've burned their tongues before and learned nothing from it. When we stood, he extended his hand. "Grip like a farmer, not a banker." "Doors open at my place," he said. "No stage, just a back porch and a grill." "Same at mine," I said. "Bring your own lawn chair." The letter from Emily came midweek, slid through the slot to land between the front rug and my bad doormat. I knew her script right away. She's always pressed too hard with pens, as if she could make words stay put by denting the paper. I sat at the kitchen table with my second cup of morning coffee and read. Dad, it started, which is a word that tilts the world if you've been a stranger to it. I was wrong. I know that's not enough, but I want to say it first. Then she wrote the kind of lines a 30-year-old writes when she realizes the person she tried to edit has his own voice. I thought jokes would keep me safe. I thought sharpness made me strong. I forgot kindness isn't weak. She asked about the scholarship. She asked if the envelope would still be there when she and Tyler came back from the trip. She asked for 2 chairs. I drove down to St. Mark's that afternoon. Pastor Carl was untangling extension cords nobody had wound the way God intended. Got your envelope, he said, tapping the desk drawer that always sticks. Want me to light a candle and make it official? He jokes in the way pastors do when they want to leave your choice as yours. I told him Emily wanted to hand the first check to someone who needed it. He smiled behind his glasses. We've got a young mom finishing HVAC at ICC, he said. 2 kids, 1 part-time job, 1 car that coughs in the morning and prays in the evening. She's doing it anyway. Sounds like a house I'd be proud to fix a cabinet in, I said. He put a date on the calendar and underlined it once. Sunday after service, he said. No microphones. The day came gray and cold the way March pretends it will be spring and then takes it back. Service was simple. Hymns a half-step flat because half the choir had colds. After the benediction, people drifted toward coffee and lemon bars cut into squares too large for the napkins. We stood by the fellowship hall door, Emily on one side of me, Tyler on the other. She held the envelope with both hands like it might try to fly away. The young mom came in with a girl in braids and a boy carrying a plastic dinosaur that had survived 2 wars in a toy bin. Pastor Carl introduced us in 10 words and stepped back. Emily took a breath. This is from our family to yours, she said. For school, for the things that break when you don't have time for them to break. Her voice caught and then steadied. The mom blinked hard and said thank you in a way that sounded like a prayer someone forgot to teach her, and she figured out on her own anyway. The little girl asked if there would be more lemon bars at the next church, and Emily laughed a clean laugh and said, only if I bake them. We stood there like regular people until regular people made a space around us again. Nothing grand, nothing staged, just 4 adults and 2 kids and an envelope that moved from one hand to another. I felt more of what I wanted to feel in that quiet than I had in any loud room in months. Outside, the wind bullied the flags against their poles. I walked Emily to her car. Thank you, she said, for the second chance and for not making me earn it with a speech. You earned it with the right kind of silence, I said. The kind that listens. She leaned into me like she used to when thunder was near. Are we okay? She asked. We're in motion, I said. That's better than okay. At home, I did the only thing I know how to do. When big feelings crowd a small house, I put things where they belong. I rinsed the coffee pot. I stacked the mail. I took the small box from the dresser and set it on the kitchen table. The badge lay inside on the felt like a coin waiting to be spent. I lifted it once, felt the cool weight, and put it back. I slid the box next to a church program with the date circled and a VFW raffle ticket I'd stuck in my wallet because Hank swears this is finally the year I win the meat bundle. Later that week, I met Rick on his back porch. He waved a spatula like a conductor. We argued about charcoal versus gas because men have to argue about something that doesn't matter to prove we know what does. Tyler joined after work with grease under his nails, which I counted as a sacrament. Emily came last, hair up, no armor. We ate off paper plates and threw them at the can from across the deck. I missed twice. She laughed and missed 3 times. Rick made a show of sinking his in one smooth arc and then pretended to hurt his shoulder. We were the kind of family you can be when people stop trying to be a picture and decide to be people. When I lay down that night, the house sat square on its footings. I could hear the far train again. I could smell the faint smoke of a neighbor's late grill. I thought about the hall and the envelopes and the way a room can learn a new rule if someone says it plain. People think revenge is loud. Most days it's a boundary spoken clear and a door left unlocked for the ones who wish to come home. I don't know much, but I know a man's name is the only tool he carries into every room. Keep it sharp, keep it honest, hand it down in good working order. If this story put a little steel in your spine, share it with someone who's learning how to stand. If you want more plain-spoken tales about dignity, family, and the quiet kind of courage, subscribe and pull up a chair next time. We'll keep the coffee hot and the talk simple.